Hey everybody, Carin Andersen here with Aortic for this week's Week in Review. Our Week in Review gives us an opportunity to share with you the educational, informative, and inspirational posts that we put up on our Facebook and our website in the prior week, giving you guys an opportunity to drop us a line, leave a comment, and just catch up to what we've been doing in some of our social media platforms. But before we get started, do me a favor, click like, click subscribe, even the bell that says all, so that you're notified every time we pop a new video up here, as we did last week when we interviewed Dr. Ben Udelman. Hopefully you guys got a chance to see that. Oh, that man is very entertaining and smart. One smart cookie. So if you get a chance, check that out on our YouTube channel. Okay, so we're going to get started here, and I'm going to share my screen with you. So yeah, here we go. And also, you're going to click share, because I believe at the end of this, when you share this, somebody out there will find this very educational as well and informative. So let's get started. Mondays are typically our Movement for Movement Monday, or it is a medical Monday. And in this case, it's Movement for Movement. So a little backstory. Coincidentally, back in 2020, we created our Movement for Movement. We always have a theme for the year. Last year was Strive to Thrive in 25. This year is Ace the Fix in 26, where we're focusing a lot on how to ace your healthcare journey by advocating, communicating, and educating. But in 2020, it was a movement for movement. And what we had been hearing in the community was people's fears about moving their body after they've either been diagnosed or they have survived a dissection. And that is common. It's called a cardiac paralysis. Believe it or not, there is actually a name for it. And what we were trying to do is meet you, as we always do, where you are. So we recognize that sometimes doing nothing is doing something. But that this movement then just took off because we all got shut down in life with COVID. So then we really had to step up our game and figure out how can we move during a time when we were kind of trapped indoors. And the movement has stuck ever since. So sometimes we go through posts that talk about suggestions or how we can better move with fluctuating temperatures during the seasons. And sometimes it's just a little bit of inspiration. So define success as showing up. Everything else is extra. So success doesn't mean necessarily walking a 5K, running a marathon, taking on karate. Success is just merely showing up. That's all sometimes you have to do. So let's simplify this, because we do tend to overcomplicate a lot of things in the aortic disease world. Look, success isn't having the perfect workout. It just isn't. It's not the longest walk. It's not hitting every goal every single time. Success is showing up. Please don't forget that. I mean, showing up when you feel strong, when you feel able. It's showing up when you feel tired. It's showing up when sometimes it would be easier for you not to show up. So the real shift actually happens when you can actually define success this way. You remove the pressure and you work on building consistency. And what is consistency? That's really where progress lives. Okay. Because once you actually show up, maybe all you do is stretch, right? Maybe you just are able to take a small walk, or maybe you're just breathing and resetting yourself. That's all that counts. And it all builds upon itself. Momentum doesn't come from doing everything. It comes from doing something and making that be repetitive again and again and again. And this is especially in healing, recovery, or rebuilding strength. Showing up, that's the win. Always. No overthinking, no all or nothing, just your presence. Show up for 2 minutes. I mean, just think about it. If we showed up for 5 minutes, 3 times a day, that's 15 minutes. If you could walk, I'm not sure, let's just say a couple tenths of a mile 3 times a day, you might almost hit 1 mile. And don't poo-poo that, because a mile is something, especially when you're just starting off. Just show up and see what happens next. Anything beyond showing up is bonus, and congratulations to you. So that's your Movement for Movement Monday. Okay, we're moving on to our topic Tuesday. And look, this month of May, we were discussing aortic dissections, everything you might want to know about aortic dissections. And one of our med students, Alvaro, decided we were going to spend this particular Tuesday talking about one of the most dangerous cardiovascular emergencies. That would be an acute type A for ascending dissection. A type A dissection occurs when there is a tear that develops in the ascending aorta. Now, that tear will allow blood to enter the wall of the vessel and it kind of splits its layers. Remember, there's only three layers, three layers, but it kind of splits them all apart and it will create something called a true lumen. So, if this is your aorta and it gets torn, you now have two chambers. One is the true lumen. That would be the normal pathway. That would be the area where blood can actually perfuse or get to all of the areas in your body. It also creates, unfortunately, a false lumen. And a false lumen is now this new abnormal channel that's inside the wall of the aorta. And that's kind of going nowhere. It goes nowhere. So this is a disease. And this disease can affect otherwise functional people very suddenly and without warning. Patients often describe the pain as being the worst pain in their life. Understanding why this can happen, who it is at risk, and how surgeons actually classify these dissections, it's really essential when it comes to recognizing and treating this typically silent killer and getting to it early. Now, please do not dismiss or take that the worst pain of their life is what everyone feels. I did not feel the worst pain in my life. I felt pretty bad indigestion and a weird pop on my neck, but I never felt ripping, tearing sensation. Instinctually, I knew something was very, 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 very wrong. Um, the symptoms that are described tend to be the ones that are talked about most often, but does not mean that's the only thing you should look for. So if you are someone who's been diagnosed with an aneurysm as a patient, not a physician, my suggestion to you would be anything that you feel that feels very off and different, I would shoot a message to a physician. And if you are in serious doubt, go get it checked out because you'd rather go and have a quick 5-minute CT scan than to sit on a potential dissection that just wasn't super painful for you. Okay. And a simple way to understand what a type A dissection would be is to imagine the ascending aorta. Ascending is coming out of the heart. It's like a high pressured fire hose that's connected directly to the heart. If the inner layer of the hose or the intima, if it suddenly tears, the blood can literally, due to the force itself through the other two layers and begin splitting them all apart under this pressure. And as the dissection extends, goes down, lengthens, that normal channel for blood flow becomes compressed by that false lumen we were talking about, which makes it much harder for blood to actually reach the rest of the body, which becomes a critical situation. And type A dissections are often especially dangerous because the coronary arteries originate directly from the ascending aorta. And the coronary arteries go to the heart. They are the ones that are responsible for bringing oxygen and blood to the heart itself. So when the dissection flap, and there will be one because that's the area that broke away, so there's a flap, extends near the coronary arteries, it can completely or partially block blood flow into them. Now, this complication is known as coronary malperfusion, which is a lack of blood flow. And as a result, that heart muscle, it's going to suddenly become ischemic, meaning it's not getting enough oxygen. And patients can develop then chest pain, a lot of arrhythmias, heart failure, cardiogenic shock, or even cardiac arrest. Oh, who's at risk? It's been a lot of conversation about people that can be at risk, but most of the patients that are at risk already have an underlying risk factor long before the dissection ever happens. So here's some of the common risk factors. And this is what I struggle with the most. When I'm in public and I look at a big crowd of people, I know that there is a percentage of that population I'm looking at that probably has these risk factors or has an immediate family member that has these risk factors, which then possibly puts them at risk too. So the common risk factors would be chronic hypertension. That's the most common one, to have some hypertension. If you smoke, no smoking. It's a very high risk factor. Atherosclerosis, which would be deposits in your vessels. If you're older age, but don't assume if you're in, like, what is older age? How do they really define that? Because typically there are people out there they don't realize they have a genetic component, but they're in their 30s, some even as young as in their mid 20s, some even younger that might have Marfan syndrome. And it does tend to run statistically more in men, although I might want to do a non-scientific poll on that. Because I think it probably runs a lot in females. And I would wonder if females dismiss it because we're just so used to having and tolerating physical pain, such as our menstrual cycle or giving birth, right? A lot of factors go into there. But hypertension, it's so important because years of having elevated blood pressure will progressively damage the aortic wall. It's something that could be possibly in your control, something to really think about. Don't dismiss blood pressure issues and don't dismiss medication. If you are prescribed medication, you need to take it when you're supposed to take it. And one of the things I will say is because these medications do not act like a Tylenol and all of a sudden go into effect within 20 minutes of taking it. Now, some of these medications need 2 to 4 hours before they fully go into effect. Again, I'm not a physician. I'm repeating stuff that I have learned about, that I've heard during interviews that I've had with physicians, okay? Genetic and connective tissue disorder. This is another hot topic, but some younger patients might develop a dissection because they have an inherited disorder that affects their connective tissue. And that could be Marfan syndrome, Loeys-Dietz syndrome, could be Ehlers-Danlos, one of the many mutations off of those syndromes. These disorders tend to weaken the structural integrity of the aorta, which makes it more susceptible to dilation and tearing. And here's some other important causes. You could have a bicuspid aortic valve. And we talked about this another month ago when we were discussing valve disease, but a bicuspid aortic valve, to remind you, would be a valve that only has two leaflets. Two leaflets. Typically we have three, but this one would only have two cusps or leaflets. Okay, so that's why it's called bi. Now the problem with having a bicuspid valve is that it could lead to an aneurysm, which then could lead to a dissection. And that is definitely hereditary, bicuspid valve. So if someone in your family has one, you want to really ask a cardiologist to have an echo to take a look at yours. This is nothing necessarily that you would know. You are born with it. You do not develop it. And we would not know we had this unless we had a scan for some other reason. Maybe you're having arrhythmia, and they're just checking your heart. But it's found incidentally most times, okay? And then that needs to be monitored in case you form an aneurysm and you could have a dissection. If you've had prior cardiac surgery, heart surgery, bypass, you could be at risk. If you've used cocaine or any kind of stimulants, this would include Monster drinks and Red Bulls. All of you energy, Celsius loving drink lovers, moderation, right? If none at all, especially if you know you're at high risk, I would say dump those Red Bulls and vodkas, get rid of those Monster drinks, find another way to develop energy than drinking highly caffeinated drinks. You could have inflammatory aortitis. You could have trauma. You could have been in a car accident and boom, that, airbag hits you in the chest. That happens, okay? Let's talk about the DeBakey classification of an aortic dissection because there's a Stanford and there's a DeBakey. So when doctors diagnose an aortic dissection, one of the first things they tend to determine is where is the tear? Where did it begin? And how far is it spreading into the aorta? So they came up with this method to describe things clearly. And they used something called the DeBakey classification system or the Stanford system. So we're going to talk about the DeBakey, named after Dr. DeBakey. This is the classification system, and it was established and pioneered by a surgeon named Michael DeBakey, who actually had to have surgery because he had a dissection at like 90 years old. Crazy. This DeBakey classification is actually a cornerstone in clinical practices for detailing the anatomical extent of an aortic dissection. And by categorizing these dissections based on their point of origin, excuse me, and the path that they travel, really seems to help physicians be able to describe where the dissection is, the primary internal tear, and how far through the aorta has it traveled, the distal propagation of the false lumen. Understanding the specific type, 1, 2, or 3, typically require emergent surgical intervention. Surgical planning. This classification can help determine whether you need to actually replace the ascending aorta, aortic root, or up and even into the arch. Long-term follow-up monitoring based upon the classification helps guide the surveillance of the distal or furthest away aortic segments in chronic cases. So let's take a look at this. So the classification, DeBakey type 1, the origin of dissection would be your ascending aorta. It could extend into the arch and descending abnormal aorta. The Stanford equivalent would be called a type A. DeBakey would call it a type 1. Stanford calls it a type A. The outcome, usually emergent. In a DeBakey type 2, that would not necessarily include the arch. That would just be confined to the ascending. That would also equal a type A. Again, usually emergent surgery. DeBakey type 3A would be the descending thoracic aorta. So that's going to be after your arch. That is strictly limited to the thoracic aorta that's still in the chest, but descending, going down. That equals a Stanford type B. Those are often managed medically with medication. Now, the DeBakey type 3B is the descending thoracic aorta again, but that goes below your diaphragm area and into the abdominal region. That's also still a Stanford type B. Now, that could be medically managed, but might need a TEVAR or thoracic endovascular aortic repair or another surgery. It really depends on if there's complications with that. So you see how there's like little nuances. Me, I prefer the Stanford, going with a simple A or B, surgery or medically managed with the potential for surgery. Here's a look at it visually. So when you go 1, 2, 3, which is the lighter red, I believe. Let's see how they did this here. Right, so you have your normal aorta. Your Stanford A includes DeBakey 1 and 2, which is your ascending or only, or your ascending and descending thoracic. This is going to be Stanford A, DeBakey 1 and 2. A DeBakey 3 or a B has no involvement in the ascending or the arch and strictly going to be your descending thoracic, possibly if it gets into the abdominal area. Now, then it's an abdominal aortic dissection. Okay. Why is an aortic dissection dangerous, especially a type A? Well, let's think about this. Where's that type A? This is your heart right here. This is your heart. Types A are going to involve the ascending aorta, which is the closest to the heart, which means the biggest amount of blood volume is going to be going up that ascending. The highest degree of pressure is what's coming directly being pumped out of the heart. This area is critical because there's blood in the heart. It sends it to the brain. It sends it to the heart via the coronary arteries, and it's responsible for having enough pressure to get it up and around to the rest of the body. And if this dissection worsens, it can actually lead quickly to heart failure, to a stroke, to cardiac tamponade, or sudden death. Okay, so here's a great graphic. Not going to go through all of this, but this shows you your ascending aorta, a type A tear here, could also be here. There's so many issues such as organ malperfusion. You might not get blood flow to different organs in your body. This is a great one for you to read. This is a lot for me to read. All right. Before a patient with a type A dissection goes into surgery, let's talk about this one. The first priority is to immediately try to reduce the amount of stress being placed on that weakened aortic wall. So every heartbeat and every increase in blood pressure creates this additional force against the dissection, including the risk of an extension of that dissection or an actual rupture, which would be life-threatening, if not fatal. For this reason, early management tends to focus on let's get the heart rate down via medications, let's lower the blood pressure, no stress. For any of you who had a dissection, if you remember, if you had to go to the bathroom, you typically were given a bedpan because they're not going to get you to stand up and shift positions to affect your circulation. It's a big deal. They want to control pain. They want to control sympathetic stimulation. The pain itself can worsen the situation because when you have pain, you release the stress hormones that elevates your blood pressure and then your heart rate, and then it's just a big, huge mess that can blow up. Definitive treatment with an A. Some going to be emergency surgery. That's what's going to happen. So unlike some of the type B dissections, which can be medically controlled, an acute type A dissection, it's generally considered a surgical emergency. And that's because of the extremely high risk of catastrophic complications. So the operation is performed depending on how far the dissection extends and which structures are involved. Surgeons might need to replace the ascending aorta, replace the aortic root, maybe repair or replace the aortic valve, reconstruct part of the aortic arch. The main objectives of doing surgery with an A is to prevent rupture and to restore normal blood flow, eliminate the most dangerous portion of the dissection and save that patient's life. These operations are very complex and they require rapid coordination between emergency physicians, cardiologists, anesthesiologists, interventionists, cardiothoracic surgeons, a lot going on. It is the most rapidly progressive and life-threatening emergency in cardiovascular medicine today is an aortic dissection. Early recognition is essential because patients can deteriorate within minutes to hours. So here's a little bit more about Michael DeBakey, okay? He was one of the most influential cardiovascular surgeons in history and a true pioneer of modern aortic surgery. His work actually transformed how surgeons approach diseases of the aorta today because of his enormous contributions. One of the major classification symptoms, as we discussed, carries his name, the DeBakey classification. And there he was. Okay, that's it. That's what we got for you for last week's Topic Tuesday. Such interesting information. I hope that you found it interesting. Remember, at the end of this, share this video because others need to learn. If your family members ever really wanted to try to understand, this is a great segment to have them watch. Okay, we are off to Therapeutic Thursday. Yay! Therapeutic Thursdays are back. Not every Thursday, but many Thursdays. And you have an opportunity to be a guest, just like Molly Thomas was. So a little bit of background. This is John Quick. He is a survivor of a dissection and went on to become a therapist and has generously donated his time to be able to work with the community. And Molly is actually a new board member for us from last year, and she is one of the directors of social media and marketing. And they have a link here. There's also, if you go to our website under programs and you just touch that button, you'll see all of the playlists easy right at your fingertips. And you could go right to Therapeutic Thursday, and hers will be the most recent one there. Listen, healing really happens when we start to talk about it. Okay, there's a lot of information here from John on his dissection. Bring you guys up to speed on how he became a qualified cognitive behavioral therapist in trauma, loss, anxiety, depression, PTSD, and general physical rehabilitation, amongst other issues, and volunteer work that he does. And what he is doing in this program is discussing the emotional and psychological effects, if any, that having aortic disease has done to you, a community member or a caregiver. This topic seems to be taboo. We talk a lot about what we went through, detail to detail physically, but we don't talk enough about what it did to us psychologically. I am going to be a guest soon. I did a guest spot maybe a couple years ago, but all I had to talk about was my dissection, which prompted me, along with a few others, to create Aortic Hope. But October of 2025, I had to have my scheduled second surgery. And that's a whole other can of beans. Just, yeah, can't wait to share it with you. So that's what we're talking about here. So if you would like to be part of this program, I believe there should be a link here. If not, there will be a link on the next week's Therapeutic Thursday where you can sign up, and then John will reach out to you directly and talk with you about some of the things you might not want to discuss online. This is not a provide therapy session. This is a let's talk. By sharing, you might validate what someone else has been feeling and thinking but didn't want to ever say. So that validation goes a long way in helping people during the recovery and management of aortic disease. Have at it. Check out Molly's interview with John. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, for the month of May, we've been reiterating to you how to ace your healthcare journey. This initiative was launched about 2 years ago in Scotland with our partners, Aortic Dissection Awareness, UK and Ireland. I was asked with Dr. Ben Udelman to come up with something that we do together as doctor, patient, but he's not my doctor. So I was kind of, what are we going to talk about? But what I realized was that we tend to elevate our physicians, the police, judges, teachers. We elevate people because we innately give them respect for their position. But see, what happens with that is we sometimes lose our voice in the communication process. So speaking with physicians, a lot of times what happens is we tell the physician how we're feeling or what's wrong, and they tell us what to do to fix it. Okay. The problem is if we don't come clean and tell them exactly how we're feeling physically, mentally, emotionally, they don't know how to advocate for us. They don't know what to do for us. You cannot necessarily over communicate with a physician. And I know we're all scared to irritate the gatekeeper who picks up the phone, but it's important. And one of the things we've already talked about is advocate. We've talked about how to speak up, let people know your wants and your needs as a patient, right? Or for your patient if you're a physician. We've talked about C, communicate, share information with your physician about how you are honestly feeling. And we want doctors to share information with patients. The communicate might actually be, what's your preferred method of communicating? You could say to your physician, do you prefer to be texted, be emailed, go through a patient portal? There's so many different things that go into each of these avenues. And for some people, it might be just tell me what to do and how to do it. They don't want to know all the fluff and stuff. They just want minimal information. And then there's people like me that want to know and show me diagrams and let me understand. But today we're going to talk about E for educate. And this is where you can control yourself and your knowledge. You want to educate yourself on the disease. You want to educate your physicians about how you're feeling emotionally and physically, and encourage your physicians to educate their colleagues who might also be part of your team. The key between about education is that education's empowerment, right? It's a vital part of you taking control of your own aortic journey and being a part of this. Educate, understand your condition, your care, and your whole story. Here's some ways that you can stay informed. Learn about your diagnosis, your treatment, and your medications. Understand them. Know your family history, or think aorta, think family, because there's going to ultimately be a connection. It might not be today, but it could be in the future. And if there is no genetic condition, make sure your family members, your siblings, your children are treated as though they have something. Talk to a physician that is going to continue to monitor them until the point of diagnosis, which hopefully never happens. Share both your physical and your emotional experiences. This is no time for shame. Do it because there's a way to fix it. Keep track of any changes, any symptoms you're feeling, any questions you have. We have this in our book, which I always look for it to be right at my fingertips, and somehow it's never right at my fingertips. Aortic Disease, the Patient Guide, or Aortic Dissection, the Patient Guide. You can download these for free. You can order a single copy. You can tell your physicians to order for free a box of 25. Either way, there is a diagram section. Ask your physician to draw diagrams in there and explain to you what's going on, what could go on. Use trusted resources, not Facebook. Don't go to Facebook pages to garner medical information and to guide your learning. Go to Facebook pages for support, to hear their personal story. That is the truth, their story. But the medical opinions are not the truth. That is not necessarily accurate. Go to a nonprofit organization. Our organization here at Aortic Hope is led by patients. It is for the community, by the community. We walk the walk, we talk the talk. We've written these books. We lead our support group meetings. This is where you're going to find really good hands-on tools on how to ace your healthcare journey, because the more you understand, the more confident you become in making decisions about your health. And remember, you are more than a test result or a scan. Your full story matters. And when you educate yourself and your healthcare team, you help create a clearer, more complete picture of your health. Stay curious, stay informed, stay empowered. This is not a power struggle. It is a power balance for two-way street for success. So when you educate, you're taking that final step in acing your healthcare journey. And why have we talked about this all month? Because we have an addendum to this. Super excited to announce a new initiative that is part of acing your healthcare journey. You're going to have to pay attention. It's coming out in June. I'm not sure who's bringing it to you on here, but somebody will, and we're going to talk about it then. But until then, please try to practice how to ace your healthcare journey ASAP, because awareness saves aortas, period. Okay, you guys, we just came off of Qigong Sunday. Got new videos coming out from community member Kevin Songer, who also leads us down the road of Qigong. This is a very gentle, flowing practice. It is really, truly designed to help support relaxation. Feel relaxed just talking about it. Breathing and overall well-being, meeting you right where you are in your journey. Look, it's been created by the community. It is meant to be used by the community. It is calm mindset, calm, mindful, intentional movement. He creates a space to restore and reconnect. But as always, double check with your physician before you start any new exercise program. Qigong can also be done in a seated position. So it's a series of flowing but intentional movement. It's happening like every other Tuesday at 12 o'clock. We're going to have new videos here. But again, if you missed one, go to programs and go click right on AHTV Qigong with Kevin Songer, and you'll see all the videos we've put out so far that he has created for us. All right, we're moving on to our events. We're almost done with the month, so the new events will come up. But when you utilize this event page, and secret, we're going to be relaunching tweaks to our website sometime before the end of the year or by January 1st. If you hover over any of these things in red, they will take you to links. These are our support group meetings. All you have to do is click on it, and it takes you to a sign-up sheet. You only sign up once, and you will always be sent a link to join a Microsoft Teams meeting, which is closed on the following date. So if you sign up for caregivers, only caregivers are allowed to participate. If you sign up for survivors and caregivers, you're going to have patients and caregivers. If you're in Canada, you will be only given the Canadian link. And if you sign up for bereavement, you will be given a link every other month on the second Tuesday. So all the dates are here, the times are here, and all times are represented are Eastern Standard. So today is the 25th. What we have left is tomorrow. Exciting recording on AHTV by aortic athletes Jack Crow and, oh, I can't remember Greer's last name. his co-host Greer. They are interviewing Dr. Singh, who is talking about always an athlete, aortic disease, and return to sports. So for those of you who have been very physically active, Aortic Athletes is a wonderful Facebook page. They're not a nonprofit organization, but they are a Facebook page that we highly support because we have a subset of our community members that we know were once extremely active and want to get back to that. And they really offer a lot of educational videos working through us that kind of help teach you how to do that or what you can talk about with your own physician to work out your exercise plan so that you will get back to the things that you love doing. And we also have our final support group meeting of the month. It is going to be, as always, the last Wednesday at 7 p.m. And I highly encourage you guys to join. Okay, where are we? I do want to mention until the end of the month, we have reduced the cost for our safe belt covers. Belt covers. The belt covers are typically $18 that you can receive one in the States, 23 internationally. I believe that is now 14 and 20. So go ahead and check out this form. The belt covers do look a little different. This is an actual picture of what they look like. They come in red or black. They say on it, in case of an emergency, medic alert, or aortic disease, because we know that the aneurysms and the valve issues, they all fall under aortic disease. They Velcro on, I think I have one. They Velcro onto your safety belt in your car. They have a spot to put a medical card on the inside. They're easy to wash. They can go on a leash. They can go on a backpack if you're taking a hike. They can go on a bar on your bike if you're taking a bike ride. It's so versatile. So I highly encourage you to pick out these belts, but also on the order form, strategically placed is our awareness car magnets, which I'll show you that picture again. The awareness car magnets look like this. It's oval. Actually, it's oval. And those are with a $10 donation, or you can pick up one of our car decals. That is not on that picture, but this is what the car decal looks like. I put it on the back of my laptop. I have one on my car, and those you can get with a $5 donation. So that is all underneath of our own personal swag. If you scroll down one more, you can go to our spread shop. There is always usually a sale. I don't know if you can see it right here. This one had 15% off the entire shop. Right, I think another one starts in just a couple days. You just click the redeem button. It's good for anything that's on our shop. It's a perfect time now to start thinking about getting things for Father's Day or graduation gifts. Great time that you can check out everything we have on our shops. And I do believe that is pretty much all that we have for the week for you. So thank you so much for tuning in. We have some exciting interviews coming up in June. We will be back to having our women's group, Women Inspiring Support and Empowerment, our WISE group, coming up in the month of June. That's usually the last Monday for women. We will have our next bingo coming up at sometime in the next 2 months. And something exciting stuff that's happening. Yeah, I think I'm drawing a blank right now. We're really excited. I'm going to get to go to Edwards Life Sciences, who's one of our wonderful supporters for this year. I have been chosen to go and be part of their patient experience because I am a recipient of an Edwards valve. You can check them out on our website by scrolling down the front page. You will eventually come to a section with our sponsors, and there's a link there so that you can learn everything there is about Edwards Life Science and really how they make it part of their daily mission to listen to and encourage the voice of the patient. So I'm going to report back on what that trip is like and what it entails, but I'm not going to give you details because if you have an Edwards valve, you too can apply to be part of next year's patient experience. But I also want to give a shout out to another amazing partner, and that is Cook Medical Group. Cook innovates. They're very innovative, and they manufacture quality medical devices that really help us improve our lives. And they've been an incredible donor as well for this next year. Their headquarters are actually in Bloomington, Indiana. So right here in the States, but they have global manufacturing facilities, which really aim to increase their impact worldwide, and they are doing that. So again, thank you to these top two sponsors for us so far for this year. We have others, but we really want to make sure we give that shout out to Cook Medical and to Edwards Life Sciences. And again, I think that's it for the week. So please do me a favor, click like, click subscribe, click that bell so you're notified whenever there's a video, and share. Sharing is caring. Knowledge is power. We say it all the time. And that is it for me for this week, and we will see you again soon. Thank you and take care.